Thank you. Good evening. You like that? Carranza. I also want to just take this opportunity to thank all three principals in this building. Gracian Harrison for Boys and Girls High School. I got on my red and black. Allison Farrington from Research and Service High School. And Tabari Bomani from Nelson Mandela School for Social Justice. Thank you all for having us this evening. We really appreciate it. And we're going to keep you standing, if you would please, because we have an amazing young lady. Please welcome Armani Stewart Torres, the junior class president of Boys and Girls High School. She's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Here's our flags.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Give it up for Armani. So to do some opening remarks for us, I want to bring up Fred Bautiste, our PTA president for Boys and Girls. Fred, where are you? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to bid a warm welcome to the mayor, to the chancellor, to all the staff from DOE, to the principals, and I have to really acknowledge all the great work you're doing for our kids. This is really what it's all about. Armani, you did such a fantastic job. Welcome to the historic Boys and Girls High School. And again, my name is Fred Baptiste, and I serve as the proud president of the PTA here. There's a lot going on here at the school. We are so happy you are able to join us here in this place. I think there's a significance in the fact that we're doing it here. This is the Renaissance. This is where we are changing education. This is where we are shaping young minds, our leaders, the future, and I keep looking at Armani, the future. And I just have to say very quickly, I'm really happy to see most of you. And just as a personal point, as I was coming in, it's amazing how many people are so familiar here. These are people we've been working in the trenches, having the meetings, going to PTA meetings, reviving PTAs as necessary. So it's such a pleasure to see you all here tonight to share this moment. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chancellor, again, welcome to Boys and Girls. Please remember this place, so many things going on here, so many things we would like to do as well. We've done so much in terms of, you see this beautiful gym that we really want to even improve for our kids. We have a wonderful community school. We have a track and field that needs a little turn of loving care, but we'll talk about that later. But thank you again, and welcome everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fred. We wouldn't be able to do this without so many of our electeds who support our public schools, and so I want to welcome our council member, Robert Cornegy.
Thank you. So many people know that every time I have an opportunity, I try to use technology to encourage our kids to use technology. So I'm gonna do the best I can. Just so you know, the last time I did this, I did it with my iPhone. And it was a televised event. And my children said that the iPhone in my hand looked like a pack of gum. So I got a larger iPad, so it's kind of anatomically correct. So I'm gonna do the best I can. So good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be able to welcome you here tonight, joined by the mayor and the chancellor, as well as the education chair and my good friend, Mark Traeger. I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. I'm really interested in hearing from you because each of you represent at least one classroom full of parents and caregivers who aren't able to join with us tonight. You're speaking for those parents too. A parent who isn't able to join us because they're working late, or a caregiver who isn't able to join us because he has to care for a family member. All those parents, caregivers, and students rely on your voices to speak for them in forums just like this. That's why I welcome you all here tonight, and that's why your voices are so important. A lot of times I wonder whether people invite me to these forums because I'm the council member or because, more importantly, I'm a father of 6. And I've had a child in every facet of the New York City school system. I understand how valuable it is to have learning communities that engage with families to deliver the best for all of our children. We're here tonight with that goal in mind. We want to build our city successes like the new sensory and gross motor skills lab serving PS 59, successes like the re-implementation of the gifted and talented program in District 36 schools, and successes like universal pre-K and forthcoming 3K for all. We're also here tonight to learn from your ideas and experiences to overcome obstacles and to make sure our education leaders have the right priorities in mind. When the mayor returns to City Hall, when the chancellor, deputy chancellors, and superintendents sit down behind their desks tomorrow morning, I want them to have your perspectives in mind. Your perspectives on gifted and talented programs, on our science, technology, engineering, arts, and math education, or on our specialized high schools, or on serving our students with special needs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, council members. See, I'm gonna copy now. I'm gonna bring my technology out to do my next introduction. I want to just welcome a new friend of mine and our education chair for the council. Please welcome Mark Traeger.
I'm old school. I could do it without technology. It is an honor to be here. I want to thank the Boys and Girls High School family for hosting us here today. I want to welcome all of the great DOE staff, my colleague in government, Councilman Cornegie, all the advocates, the parents. And I want to personally say thank you to the mayor and the chancellor. I don't recall many listening tours and engagements with parents during the Bloomberg years. Am I right about that? I don't recall that. I think they deserve a round of applause for that. Yes. And very quickly, the message to parents and to families: you are the difference makers. I share that with you as a former teacher. Open school nights, the emails, the phone calls, the meetings, they worked. They make an impact. The more engagement we had, it resulted in better outcomes for our students. It's truth. I know sometimes the textbooks might not say that, but I'm telling you that. And I'm sure you're going to hear that from our mayor and our chancellor as well. You are the ultimate difference makers in our communities and our schools, so we thank you. And we heard you loud and clear on many issues. Thanks to parents and families, we were able to make some changes and improvements when it comes to the student transportation, the school bus issue. Your emails, your tweets, your Facebook messages, they worked. To the credit of the chancellor and the mayor, they did make some changes and more are on the way, so we heard you. We heard you on the need for more art programs and music programs and social workers, because we increased, thanks to the mayor and the council and the chancellor, $125 million increase in fair student funding to our schools. And we're gonna fight for more because the state of New York owes us a lot more money. And so the more we hear from you, the more we work with you, the better off our system is, our kids. It's all about the children. And again, you are the difference makers. We're here to serve you and to empower you. Thanks so much for tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Traeger. All right, to introduce our mayor, I want to give a personal special thanks for somebody who welcomed me to New York the way that he did and who has been using his voice to transition to your voice to make sure that we understand so much of what's happening in the parent community. Please welcome District 16 President Naquan McQueen.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to make this brief. I'm going to be real quick with it, but when we began to have this conversation about this meeting back in August, when we sat down with the chancellor and he asked us to sit down with him and his team to work to have these type of meetings where parent electeds were able to come to speak to the chancellor and the mayor to tell them about the concerns that we've had. And then when they called me a couple of days ago and said, well, where do we want to have Brooklyn? I said, we're going to have it at Boys and Girls High School because we keep it 100 here. So I'm so glad that you all are here tonight, and I want to thank you for taking this opportunity. As our Councilman Traeger said, that in the Bloomberg years, we don't even talk about that because that was traumatizing to us. But we thank you for coming out tonight, and I want to welcome you to District 16, Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, the heart of New York City. The mayor and the chancellor of New York City. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well done. Thank you, Naquan. Well, it is such a joy to be here. It really is, especially in this place. And I want to echo Naquan's point. This is a very, very special school with an extraordinary history and an extraordinary future to come. And I want to talk about that, but first I want to say, Naquan, would you just do me a favor? Would you stand up one moment, please? Okay, just stand up. Stand up. Stand up. First of all, I want to just say Naquan has brought new meaning to the fashion choices of parent leaders all over this city. And he will be emulated all over our nation, I believe. If you want to make a point, wear a tuxedo to the parent meeting. So, Naquan, I want to thank you for all you have done for the parents and the students of this district and all you've done citywide, but I mainly want to say to you, happy birthday. To all the leaders of this campus, thank you. This, again, is a legendary place, but when something's legendary, it means we don't rest on the laurels of the past. We build on that history. Amazing things are happening here. A lot more is going to happen. And for generations and generations of people in the community who love this school, they're going to see great and higher heights up ahead. Let's thank all the leaders of this campus for all they have done. And Armani, thank you. You look like a president, okay? That's a very presidential look. You did a great job. Thank you to the elected officials. Robert Cornegie, we've had the conversations many times about his own family, and when he thinks about all of your children and everyone else's children, he sees through the eyes of his own children. That's what we want for our elected officials and our public servants, and I know you make education a priority every day, and it's making a big difference. Let's thank Robert for all he does. To Mark Traeger, I want to say, here's some old school technology. It's called paper. I have my notes on paper. I'm feeling good about that. I don't need to be like Robert with the screen. This works too. But Mark, thank you again. A very special thing. There's a lot of people who talk about public education, but very few times do you see a leader like the chairman of the Education Committee in the City Council who was actually a teacher and knows what he's talking about. Mark, thank you for all you do. So I'm going to be very, very quick because tonight is about hearing everyone's voices and helping us learn. And I want to start at the beginning. There is something powerful about a town hall meeting because it is direct democracy. Everyone in this room, first of all, I commend you because you care enough to be here. Everyone's got busy lives. Everyone's got too much to do. But you're here because you care about our children, your own children, and everyone else's children. And it makes a huge difference because for the Chancellor and I, we are trying to get it right every single day. But we cannot get it right if we don't understand what's happening from your perspective. It's as simple as that. We can put the most beautiful ideas out there. We can put a whole lot of money behind them, but we need to know from you what is working and what is not working. We need to know from you whether your child and the children that you know in your school are being uplifted and whether they're progressing because of the things we're doing or whether we have to do something else. That is why we have these meetings. You know, my wife Charlene loves to say a phrase that she got when she was a kid: every day's a school day. We are all learning. We, the Chancellor and I, and all of our colleagues who are here, we're here to learn because we need to make sure we get it right. Now, I can tell you, for me, it's very simple, it's very clear. Education is the #1 priority. I have felt that from when I ran for mayor. I felt that every day I have been mayor. If we get education right, all the other things fall into place. I really believe it. If you want to secure the future of this beautiful city, this greatest city on earth, we secure our future by getting it right in our public schools. And that's what we work on every single day. And I have seen the potential of our schools to go farther than anyone ever imagined. I want to remind everyone, we have the highest graduation rate we have had in the history of New York City right now, the highest graduation rate ever, the lowest dropout rate ever. Last year in June, 59% of the kids who left our schools went on to higher education. 59%, highest ever. There's a lot more to do, but you can see the progress happening and you can see the potential, and that's what we're committed to. For me, it is very personal also because of my own experience. So both my children went to New York City public schools from pre-K to 12th grade. They had an amazing experience. They got everything they needed for life. not just academically, but socially, humanly as well. They experienced extraordinary educators who helped them along the way. And everybody they experienced, the crossing guards and the staff in the school, everybody looked out for them. And they felt like they were watched out for. I want to make sure every single child has that experience. And I want to make sure, and I know Richard does too, that a child has the same quality, respectful, positive experience regardless of their zip code, regardless of what neighborhood, regardless of what the history of the school was in years past. Our job is to create equity and excellence, to ensure that every school now is reaching its potential and children get what they deserve, all neighborhoods. And that was not the truth in the past. You know, one thing that Richard and I have been putting into place, it's such an obvious example, advanced placement courses in every single high school. Because the history was previously that some high schools had advanced placement courses for decades or even generations, and other high schools did not have a single advanced placement course. What an example, what a message to children. It telegraphs to children that you are worthy and you are filled with potential. If college level courses are being provided in your high school, that says we believe in you. But if they are not provided, it sends a negative message. So we have a very clear rule. Every high school in New York City will have advanced placement. Every child that's ready for those classes should have a right to those classes. That's what we believe in. And that's what we're going to make happen. I saw, as a parent, just how hard it is to be a parent in this city. I, in fact, was the first mayor ever to be mayor with a child in the public schools, and to be thinking about everyone's kids while I was thinking about how my own child was doing that day in school. And it gives you a different perspective. And it gave me a sense of urgency that we had to fight for changes very quickly. So I have seen over the last 5 years what's possible. Tonight, you're going to help us understand where we should go, what we need to do better, what's working, what's not working. We need your thoughts, we need your suggestions. And we're going to act on them. And this is why I want to single out, I should say, these two people standing here. Our chancellor, who I'm about to introduce, and our deputy chancellor. Our deputy chancellor, Hydra Mendoza, is here specifically. She was hired specifically because we recognized we were not doing a good enough job communicating to parents, and we were not doing a good enough job hearing back from parents what they needed and what they believed. And Hydra has been reworking the Department of Education's whole approach to communication and engagement and involvement of parents and empowerment of parents, a word that our chancellor uses consistently. Empowerment is the goal. Stakeholders. Everyone in this room is a stakeholder in the education of their children and all the children in their school. But the other thing I want to note as I turn to the chancellor is when I was interviewing him, what was so striking to me, he could have been a little worried. He could have felt like he was risking to say something as blunt and as bold as he did. He's there in an interview for the #1 education job in the United States of America. And he said, I have to tell you very honestly, I see the role of educator as a social justice activist. And that through our schools, we can not only educate our children and prepare them intellectually and academically, but we can make the fundamental changes our society needs. They can be the #1 place where fairness actually develops and where people get to see what a fairer, better society looks like. And I'll tell you something, he's been doing it. Remember that famous movie where they said, you had me at hello? You know, when he said that, I was like, this is the man. And he has been the man. He has come in and hit the ground running, and he's doing an amazing job. Our Chancellor, Richard Carranza.
Wow. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And it really is an honor for all of us. You know, New York City, a city of 8.6 million New York residents. And on this evening, with so many things happening in New York, our mayor is dedicating his time to be here in community in Brooklyn to listen to our parent leaders. So, Mr. Mayor, I want to thank you for being here and thank you for listening. I also want to just make sure everybody is really clear. I am standing up. Okay, I'm still not sitting, I'm standing up. But all kidding aside, I think our mayor just spoke beautifully about what it is that we're trying to do, what it is that we're endeavoring to do with our community. And I will just reemphasize one thing that the mayor has already very eloquently stated. We are not interested in just parent engagement. Parent engagement is a very low bar. Deny a student a place in that program you want them to be in, I guarantee you we're going to engage parents. So engagement is important, but it's a very low bar. What we are committed to is empowerment. And we don't empower you, you empower us. But the way we work together in empowering, it's about knowledge. It's about making sure that when you have something you have to say, you know that our elected leaders are here to listen. You know that the mayor of our city is here to listen. You know that the chancellor of schools and his senior leadership team is here to listen. Not because we want to check the box and say we've listened, but because we want to take what you've said and put it into action. So tonight is very important. And I'm going to go even one step further. There may be some haters out there that are going to say, well, they just need to be out there for the publicity. Look, we don't need the publicity. You looked at my Twitter feed? Don't need the publicity. People have an opinion about everything. That's not what this is about. But what I love about New York is that if you want to hear from New Yorkers, you have to be with New Yorkers. And I will tell you that this mayor and yours truly believe in one thing. A mayor and a chancellor in the field is worth 3 in the seat back at City Hall or at Tweed. So the only way to know is to be out here with you. So for all of our parent leaders, I want to thank you. But more than anything, this is the most intensive, the most hours consumed for the low price of $0.99. Most important role that I would say exists in our city, the role of parent leader. Because you listen to parents, you bring the voice of our parents. And what we're here to tell you is that we don't need a law, we don't need a statute. What we are doing is here to say to you what you say matters, and we're listening. So I want to say 2 words in English and in Spanish that you don't hear often enough. And this is on behalf of the mayor and I. So I want to say this, and get ready, because you may not recognize this. So I want to say to you as our parent leaders, I want to say to you for putting in the time, for entrusting us with your most precious possessions, your children. I want to say to you 2 very simple but not simplistic words. Thank you. Muchas gracias for being here. De nada. See, they're already becoming bilingual, Mr. Mayor. I also want to take just a moment because I do want to thank some folks that are here. First and foremost, I want to thank all of our parent leaders that are in the room. Whether you're a CEC president, thank you for taking that leadership role. Whether you're a President's Council president, thank you for being here. If you're a CEC member, thank you for being here. If you're a PA or PTA president or member, thank you for being here. If you're watching us on the live stream, thank you for tuning in. And we can't do this without our enlightened leaders. And we're very fortunate that in my home borough, which is Brooklyn, we have with us 2 very enlightened leaders who we've had many conversations that have led to action, not because I've been required to, but because they have great ideas and they follow through and they put the walk where the talk is. So I want to thank our council member Cornegie for being here. Thank you, sir. Truly a man, no matter where, I look up to.
Classic. Classic.
Yeah, I'm known for my dad jokes, sorry.
Yeah.
And also someone that I've really developed an affection for, not because he is the chair of the Education Council, not because he's a council member, not because no matter where I go, I see him. he's out and about, but because he gets it. He understands that it's not just rhetoric that makes a difference in our schools. It's actually policy coupled with funding, coupled with support. And I want to thank our chair of the Education Committee and the Council, Mark Traeger. Thank you for being here, sir. And then a point of personal privilege. These folks, I can't say enough about. They worked all day today, just like many of you did today, and yet they're here ready to listen, ready to act upon what they hear. So I want to give a special thanks to my cabinet, my colleagues on the cabinet, our deputy chancellors, our executive superintendents, our executive directors, our directors. I want to thank our friends in the NYPD for their incredible partnership in what they do. I want to thank our principals and our teachers and our paraprofessionals and our custodians who do the hard work every day of making sure that we have facilities commensurate with the learning conditions for our students. I want to thank you for being here. This is community. This is why we do what we do. So with that, my parting shot is this. If it wasn't for you, our parents, there would be absolutely no need to have a school system. So the most important people in the room, aside from the students that may happen to be in the room, are parents, our guardians, our caregivers, because you entrust us with your most precious possession every single day. And us being here as community is our commitment to saying we want to listen, we want to learn, and we want to engage in that conversation so that we empower our communities. So with that, I want to say thank you all, and I'm going to hand it back off to our Deputy Chancellor Mendoza so we can get this party started.
All right. Thank you both. Are we ready? All right. So, as I shared with you earlier, if you have a question, you're going to put it on your red ticket, and we're going to have everybody that has buckets around to make sure you pop those in the buckets. We're going to start the first two rounds by having our CEC presidents do the first questions. So I'm going to have LaFleur Cumberbatch Benjamin from CEC 17 kick us off. And then I'm going to have Yannette Seeley from CEC 18, and then Evelyn Pugh from CEC 19. And I'll read off the next three right after.
Good evening, everyone. Our communities are bombarded by charter school applications, more so some districts than some. When will a freeze be put or cap on them? We need to build and improve the public schools that we have already.
Want to take it?
Sure. So, great question. What I would say to you is this. We believe that every parent should have the ability, they have the right to choose the kind of education and education that meets the needs of their students. So that being said, let me also be very clear. As a chancellor of the New York City traditional public schools, the DOE, if you will, I will say to you that we are fully committed to making sure that the educational opportunities we have in every district, in every corner of our 5 boroughs in New York City are high quality and are giving our students and families options and opportunities to get the kind of programming that they want. So part of our listening tour, part of our town halls is also to understand from the community what is it that you would like to see, what is it that you haven't seen, and what are your ideas. And I'll tell you, there's some innovative things happening across our city where communities are reimagining what school communities are like and what kinds of programs we have. Right here at Boys and Girls, there's a whole lot of planning happening about what's the next phase, where do we go, and while their outcomes are better and better, we are supporting them in developing those kinds of options so that parents see that right here in their neighborhoods there are options in the New York City public schools. Now that being said, people want to know, what are you going to do? So what we're going to do is to continue to invest and support our schools. We're going to continue to support our great principals and our great teachers and those that work in our schools. But let me be really, really plain spoken about this. I don't think it's okay for anyone to build their school by cutting down one of our schools. That's not okay. Call me protective, call me a father. Call me just plain proud of our schools. Do what you got to do. Do your enrollment thing. But don't talk about our schools, because our schools belong to the community. We're going to do what we need to do to support our schools.
Let me jump in on this because it's a very powerful issue. And I think your question was also getting at the way parents are bombarded with information from the charter side and not from the traditional public school side. Is that part of what you're talking about? Yeah, we want to address that. We're going to have more to say on that very soon, but I am very frustrated by the notion of parents, first of all, not hearing all the good things that are happening in our traditional public schools. We have to fix that side of the equation. But I think there's also a kind of residue from the past, from the previous administration, where the information about the charters was given preference and provided to parents first, if you will. And we want to see a very different reality. We'll have more to say on that very soon. The ultimate goal here, we're going to work with kids in every kind of school. That is something we believe in. But it's not just, I agree with the Chancellor, we're proud of our traditional public schools. It's that we know our traditional public schools can go much, much farther if we actually invest in them and provide them as support. And we see it right here, right? And this campus is a great example. With the right support, with the right investment, the change can be made. So suffice it to say, I think this gets to the core of your question, that there's still some things that are hanging over from the past that we have to do a better job weeding out. But we know that if parents actually get to see what can happen in their community schools, that they will choose that option much more frequently. They don't have a stereotype, but they have the full truth about what's happening in their community schools. We're going to see a lot more parents choose them. With that said, I just want to give a special shout out and a great thanks to a tremendous advocate for our parents and our children, a great Brooklynite, Councilmember Lori Cumbo. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, C18, Yannette Seeley.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor. I want to commend you for your initiative because of the pre-K, because I've managed to save daycare fee.
All right, all right.
And secondly, it's more of a concern. Being a parent and the CC District 18 president, I've managed to visit a few schools. And my concern is, you know, the parents' involvement in the PTA system. Now, I don't know why they're not coming out. I need to know. And one, I want to commend them for visiting the school, but they're not coming out at the PTA meetings. I want to know why, if they can be educated as, you know, their role, their important role in the community. I want to know because, you know, the school is a home away from home, and, you know, they need to be involved in their children's welfare.
Yep.
And, you know, they don't know their stakeholders. They're important, and without them, we won't have schools. So they need to come out and support their children. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to speak to this one. This is a really important issue. First of all, I am glad that the city of New York could put some money back in your pocket. And when we did pre-K and 3K, we knew it was first and foremost, of course, about educating and preparing our kids, but we also knew that so many parents were struggling to make ends meet. And if they had to go pay for that kind of education for their child, it was $10,000, $15,000 or more a year per child. And that should be a right, not something you only get if you happen to have the money. So now it's pre-K for all, and I want to remind you, every single child, I want to make sure it's 100% clear to people, every 4-year-old will be served. If there's anybody you know of with a 4-year-old going into this coming September who doesn't yet fully understand everything that can be achieved for their child through pre-K, educate them. But next is 3K. 3K in this September, there will be 20,000 kids in 3K in New York City this September. And that's just the beginning. That's just the beginning. We're going to keep building it out and keep building it out over the next few years. But we also need all the parent leaders to help their fellow parents know that those 3-year-olds who experience early child education, they are at a point in life where they can grow and learn intellectually in extraordinary ways. We need that chance for children to really meet their potential by experiencing 3K. So please spread that word as it grows around the city. But to your point about PTA meetings, PA meetings, so I was a school board member. I left this out of my introduction. I should have said it. I was a school board member. Like you, I was paid that grand salary of $0.99 that he paid to. He mentioned that everyone, luxurious salary. So I was a school board member for 3 years, District 15. And I would go to PTA meetings all over district. And literally, I would go to a PTA meeting and see 100 parents at one, and I'd go to another and see 6 or 7 or 8 parents. And some parents, the number one challenge was just time. They were working 2 jobs. They were working 3 jobs. They were a single parent managing a household. There's a lot of reasons why some parents can't come out. But a lot of other parents, for them, the reason was they didn't know if their involvement would have an impact. And we need to do something that Hydra Mendoza and I were talking about literally last week. We need to go out into the schools and train parents to understand what the involvement in PTAs and PAs can mean. Because from my point of view, it's accountability, first and foremost. When you have a strong PTA, it says to the principal and the teachers and everyone in the building that the parents are holding them accountable in a very positive way. It's not negative, it's positive. But it says there's an organized group of parents who want to make sure things are done right. It brings up the level of the school. Everyone plays at a higher level when there's that kind of engagement involvement. It brings in the talents of parents and whatever they can put together to help augment what the school has. But we, as a school system, we haven't done enough to encourage it. We haven't trained parents. We haven't gone and really recruited. We haven't told them why it matters. And I think, bluntly, back in the day, I think that was on purpose. I think back in the day, there wasn't a particular interest in getting more and more parents engaged. We take the opposite view. We think every additional parent who is empowered and involved makes the entire school better. So you're going to see a lot more outreach, so those meetings will be bigger and bigger and bigger. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Evelyn Pugh, who's in the building but unable to be down here with us. But Vivian is here with us, and she's going to ask her question. And on deck is Adele Doyle from CEC 20, Anna Lembarski from CEC 21, and Martha Bayona from CEC 32. Vivian.
Good evening. Her question is, what is being done to reduce class size?
So class size does matter. It does matter. So one of the things that I think is really important about class size discussion is that as we provide budgets to school sites, our principals have been extremely strategic about using that funding to be able to reduce class size. And you only reduce class size, well, it's not the only way, but the best way to reduce class size is to hire additional teachers. Okay? You can also reduce class size by reducing enrollment. None of us want that. But here's the rub. There's something called a fair student funding formula. And by our calculation, the state of New York owes the children in New York City about $1.2 billion to fully fund our fair student funding formula here in New York City. Now, I give tremendous credit. You know, I've been here 10 months, and within the first few months that I was here, our city council and our mayor invested last year $112 additional million into bringing up the floor of our fair student funding formula. So it was 87%, it's now at 90%. So all of our schools are at least at 90%. That's not okay. So if you go to work tomorrow and your boss tells you, great job, we're going to pay you 90% of your salary. Where's the other 10%? And I can tell you that if that $1.2 billion that's owed to the children of New York City come to New York City, we will invest those right back into the schools, which schools will have the opportunity then to hire additional teachers. They'll have the opportunity to hire additional counselors. They'll have the opportunity to hire additional social workers. So the situation where parents or principals have to choose. Do I reduce class size or do I hire that other counselor that I really need? Those are difficult conversations, right, principals? Those are difficult conversations. It's all about funding. We are believers that the best possible condition is to have class sizes that matter. And as a former teacher, and I know our chair as a teacher will tell you, you give me a classroom with 20, 25 students, we can do a heck of a lot than a classroom with 30, 35 students.
Amen. And just two things that are facts. One of the things we need to do in a lot of parts of the city is build more seats so you don't have overcrowded classrooms and overcrowded schools, because there literally are not enough seats for kids. Right now, since we began this administration, we put in resources for 83,000 school seats. And they're continuing to be built out all over Brooklyn, all over the 5 boroughs. That's one part of the equation. But to the point Richard made about the fair student funding, if we get the support from Albany, literally, it's by 2022, so just 3 years from now, every school in New York City could be at 100% fair student funding. So I want everyone to understand that. Our goal is every single school at 100% fair student funding, and we're 3 years away from being able to achieve that.
I see Chair Trigger doing a quiet applause over there. That's right. Thank you, Vivian. Without technology. Adele, Anna, and Martha up next. Adele.
Thank you. Adele Doyle, District 20, CEC. First of all, Chancellor, Mayor, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity that you've given for parents to express our concerns. I've never seen so much opportunity to actually speak to you in this format, so I really appreciate that. I'm going to take it a little farther, though, and we're going to talk about parent empowerment, what real parent empowerment is from what we've heard from our parents. It's one thing to have our concerns heard, but to have the feedback to understand that we are actually making a difference and that we are getting a seat at the table when it comes to drafting specific proposals. I'm speaking specifically about equity and excellence. I am a teacher. I teach in the CUNY school system. I am getting my PhD in literacy for underserved populations. And even though you may not think that we're on the same platform with social justice, I am a strong advocate of social justice because I teach these students. I teach students that 40% will not make it through the first year, who I have to talk about basic reading comprehension. There's so much to do with rigor in social justice which needs to be discussed, not just what we're talking about as far as revamping specialized high schools. And I think the only way that we can have our concerns truly heard is if we have a seat at the table, that we are able to have a dialogue, not just to present our concerns, but to know that those concerns are actually being heard and considered. Since the presentation that was given to us in October, we haven't felt that. And the rumblings from our parents are, they're going to do what they want anyway, and District 20, from our perspective, and other districts are going to be relegated to only 7% of their high-achieving students being allowed to attend these schools. I know it seems very simplistic to say, let's build more schools. Every school can provide a great education, but this is a 21st century global economy which we're asking our students to be competitive in, and these students are proceeding into doctors and scientists and medicine, and all of these situations. And again, I don't know if I told you, I have 4 children in this system. I've seen the education from a number of perspectives, but as a teacher, it's really about the rigor. Can you just tell us, will we ever have an opportunity to sit down and help you actually draft this proposal? Or is this something that people are considering in another room and you're taking our concerns, but are they actually being heard?
I appreciate the question a lot. So this rigor point is really, really important. Let me just stay on that for a second, then I'll talk about the specialized schools proposal. The rigor point gets to why we say equity and excellence, because equity where everyone is not getting what they need is not what we believe in, right? I mean, you could have equity across the school system and kids not being able to go on to college effectively, and we wouldn't be proud of that kind of equity. So the notion is we have to bring everything up. The standards previously were not high enough. They were not strong enough. Even if you go and listen to what we've done and look at with pre-K, 3K, we're trying to start rigor in the best possible way early on and really getting our kids to their academic potential. But to your point about Will there be a way to help us shape the proposal? Yes, because it has to go through a legislative process. It's very important to understand that. The specialized school proposal is wildly controversial. And I understood that when I put it forward. I did not think everyone was going to agree. I knew there would be differences. But it sparked a very healthy debate, I think. If you look at all the dialogue that's happened in this city over it, I think it was good. I think it was healthy. But now it's going to Albany, and over the next 2 months, there's going to be hearings. There's going to be a legislative drafting process. I have, with some folks in Albany, put forward a specific vision, but there's going to be a whole lot of back and forth before that vision is realized. And so I think, yes, both working with us, but also working with representatives in Albany, there's definitely a chance for that plan to evolve. I like what we put forward, but I also believe in a democratic process where there's going to be give and take. There's definitely an opportunity, we've said from the beginning, to build more seats and create more seats in specialized schools. But let's be clear, that could never be the whole solution. The goal is to make more and more and more high schools, high-quality high schools, where a talented child has an opportunity to grow. It can never be just the only ones we really have faith in is the specialized schools. We have to have more and more great options. But the last thing I want to say about the specialized school proposal, look, what happened in our specialized schools does, I mean, I respect the point about rigor, but I have to go back to the underlying reality. Here is a city that is almost 2/3 people of color, and yet our specialized schools manage consistently to not include African Americans and Latinos. That is the reality. And these schools, they're not the only great high schools, but they are some of the jewels in the crown. There's no question. They're some of the finest high schools in all of America. And if you look at the people who come out of those schools, they are leaders in government and in business and in communications, and you name it. They're people who help to shape our society. They can't, in my opinion, look like just part of New York City. They have to look like all of New York City. I believe that. I believe that. But we can do it in a way that, one, still maintains the rigor, because I believe in the rigor too. And what we've said, and I want to make sure there's not a confusion about this, no one said get rid of the single standardized test and not have a rigorous path for how people have to get in. I don't believe in a single test determining your destiny. I just don't. It's a one-session, 3-hour test that right now is deciding a child's future. I don't believe in that kind of high-stakes testing. I think we look at a child's grades over the 3 years of middle school, and we look at how they did, like everyone, on the state test scores over years, and we composite that, and that tells us what a true measure of that child is and how they compare it against other children, and it gives us a chance to truly represent kids from every neighborhood. I think that is rigorous. But your core point is very fair. You and other parents have a right to be a part of this debate in a very tangible way, and the debate in Albany is just beginning, and we really have a chance to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we have Anna next and Martha, and I've got 3 from this section on deck. Celia Green, Shayla Dewan. Shayla, can you raise your hand? Okay. And Kara Benton Smith. Kara, can you raise your hand? Great, thank you. So you're on deck. Anna.
Thank you very much. It's nice seeing you again, guys. So I have a very quick question. How will you fix our schools' infrastructure? Because it's taking too long and our school's dilapidating.
You mean in general or a specific school?
General.
In general.
In general.
All of them.
It's not just one specific district. We've been fighting on it. We've been, at the mercy of the capital fundings of Brooklyn Board of President, at the council members' mercies. I think the schools, bathrooms, don't get me started on it.
Okay, Lorraine, come up and join us. So you get to join the fun. So Lorraine Grillo is president of the School Construction Authority. And I'm going to first start accenting the positive, because I know there's problems everywhere. But as I said, they're in the middle of building 83,000 seats, which is tremendously helpful. They're in the middle of doing something I bet everyone in this room believes in, putting air conditioning in every classroom in New York City. And that will be done in just the next few years. They are in the middle of ensuring that every every school either has its own gym facility or a gym facility nearby that kids can use. Some schools have no gym whatsoever. Lorraine is in charge of fixing that. Thank you, Lorraine. And she's building all the capacity we need for 3K to build out to all of our 3-year-olds who need it. So they're busy. But your point is well taken, and I would like you to start with the question of bathrooms. What are we doing?
Correct.
And how are we setting a higher standard?
Okay, so we have a program to upgrade bathrooms throughout the city. There is a long list of schools that need these upgrades, and we're getting through them as quickly as possible. My partners at the Division of School Facilities are doing some of this work. SCA is doing some of this work because we want to get that going as quickly as possible. A lot of these bathrooms have been done already. Again, I'll have to look at what's going on in District 21, but certainly you can expect that a lot of those bathrooms will be taken care of.
Can I add to your question as your advocate? I think what would be helpful for CEC leaders is to be able to tell their people what the schedule is. So I want to give you a real life example because this is wonderful. Let's take another example again with the air conditioning. Lorraine, when will you have air conditioning in every classroom?
2022.
Every classroom?
2022.
Okay, that's real. Okay, so I want you to see that live. That was unrehearsed because because we can actually set goals and live by them. So what I would like you to do is go back, do your research, and say, what is the timeline for fixing the bathrooms in this district, which there must be a specific list of the ones with a problem, and then we can put dates to them so you know when they're going to be fixed by.
And I'd just like to add that as we do our proposal for our new capital planning, we come to every district and we discuss all of the projects that are in process in the district. So I will get you that information quickly.
But do we do it with the CECs?
Yes.
We did it. Okay, good. So we'll give you an updated version so that you know what's going on with those bathrooms.
All right. Thank you. All right, Martha, you are up. I have Celia, Shayla, and Kara on deck. Celia, Shayla, and Kara on deck.
Thank you, Hydra. Thank you so much for this time. I'm here with some of my members, board members, CEC members right here. And thank you, Mayor and Chancellor, for this opportunity. My question is very quick. In 2016, our schools were tested for lead, presence of lead in the water. 2017, the problem was fixed. But recently in 2018, right now, the schools are being tested in District 32. By the way, my name is Marta Bayona, president of CC District 32, Bushwick. Yes, there you go, Bushwick. So my question to you, Mayor, is why are we continue? I know the pipes were changed in the year 80-something, so we shouldn't be having lead in the water. By the way, the water in New York City is the best in the world, so we shouldn't have lead in drinking water. Second, if the lead is not in the pipes, they are in the faucets. Why the faucets have not been changed? And the last one is why we don't have filters in our schools if there's a legislation saying that there is money to help the schools to buy the filters. And by the way, Lorraine, you're my lady tonight also, so don't go away because District 32, my schools are dilapidated, so I need to talk to you. Thank you.
All right. You figured out where the power was. Very good. Now on lead, Karen, you're going to jump in, yes. but just to start on lead. So first of all, you are an informed citizen. We do have literally the finest drinking water in the United States.
Yes. By the way, the lead levels is 468 in one of my schools. That's highly dangerous for my students.
Okay, no, I hear you. But I'm beginning at the beginning. The water itself, this is really important. We are blessed. The water is not our problem. We have the best water in the United States of America, and it does not have lead in any way that's a danger. You're exactly right. Along the way, in some older buildings, it might be a specific faucet, it might be a specific pipe, and our job when we find that is to literally isolate it, not let anyone use it, replace it. That is the methodology, and that is, you literally do not let someone use it until it is replaced. And we've been able to do that very effectively and protect our kids and everyone in the building. So Karen, why don't you speak a little bit more about how that works and how we would address any new problem we find?
Yes. So you asked several questions in there. We test every outlet in every building. There is now a state law requiring us to test again, which is why the retesting is happening. It is not happening because of anything that happened prior. All of the fixtures that were tested in that first round of testing that New York City did on its own, we either remediated or took offline and kept offline. So the entire first round of testing is complete. We're now retesting on a regular basis. We will be testing about we're testing on a cycle so that every 5 years, every school will be tested. Question number one.
Did you get, I mean, I think it's just basically to make clear that if there's a specific concern in a school that has not been addressed or they're not explaining to parents what happened, we need to do that immediately. So do you have specific schools you're concerned about?
The letters were sent out.
Yes.
My question is why Yes. Thank you so much. So my question is, if we were tested already, so we were clear, no problems with it, but now in the retesting again in 2017, because remember we have 2016, 17,
Right.
18 again,
Yes.
we are the leads are showing up in the water. So that's one. Two, why we don't have the filters? Why it's taking so long to change? Because I'm aware of the process of changing the faucets, changing the, all these.
Let's get you the specific answer about your school, because if the equipment is changed, you shouldn't need filters. So let's find out the details, but let's do this.
Yes.
Let's get the answer immediately about any schools in your district that have that question, because sometimes what we found is the problem was fixed, but parents weren't told, which is absolutely unacceptable. So it's one, we have to fix the problem. Two, we have to tell the parents in real time what's going on.
Yeah, and I'll just add, we have a meeting tomorrow. Yes. We're going to talk about these schools, guaranteed.
Okay, that was fast. We have a follow-up meeting scheduled for you tomorrow.
Mañana.
Let me go one more step back on the specialized schools to the previous question. No, I want to do a test here. I want to do a test. So I just want to see, as people, from whatever you know at this moment of the specialized school proposal that the Chancellor and I put out, and understanding there will be a very vigorous debate in Albany, but I want to do a straw poll of the room. How many people are in favor of, I'll do two choices, the current system for admissions to specialized schools versus the proposal the Chancellor and I put out? So I just want to see what people are feeling as we start the debate. How many people are in favor of the current system? Raise your hand. Hang on a second. How many people are in favor of the proposal we put forward? Okay, this is just a start. Now, what I would suggest, to your point, is why don't we structure a dialogue with the CECs, current process, new proposal, and any opportunity to put forward any revisions or thoughts. We have a position we're starting with, but again, it is going to be a very vigorous process in Albany. If CECs have ideas that we should hear that could be part of that process, in addition to what happens with Albany, and they are the decision makers. I would love to be a decision maker. I am not. They get to decide. But we should solicit from the CECs specific feedback on status quo versus new proposal versus any other idea people may have.
Yes, sir. So, Mr.
Hydra will do that?
Yes.
Okay.
And we are currently visiting every CEC and scheduling information sessions where we are with the CEC, presenting the proposal, asking for feedback, taking that feedback, compiling that feedback as well. Absolutely. We're taking all ideas as it comes forward.
Great. All right. Celia. And then as she's preparing, Shayla and Kara. Okay.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Celia, and I am the current president of CCHS, one of two Brooklyn representatives on CCHS, the Citywide Council for High Schools. I'm also the Chancellor's Parent Advisory Council co-chair. And last but not least, I am the District 75 President's Council president. So
you are really busy.
And I have 6 boys.
Wow.
3 of whom are still in school.
What?
That's why I'm really busy.
I have a question for you. What do you eat for breakfast? Because I want to eat that.
Okay. So my question is about special ed reform, which is basically an administration ago, and we were supposed to get all of these wonderful reforms. I have had very different experiences because I do have 3 children who are still in D75. So I've had the luxury of having what true inclusion looks like. And I have 2 children that are in full-out inclusion. I've had children who have been in self-contained, and I've had, various things, various iterations. But I really want to know what, if anything, is your vision for special education reform, and bear in mind that I am a D75 parent, and I also think that D79, who's never the conversation in the room, but should be, because as a high school person, as my high school hat, D79 is very overlooked and underserved, and they have some real gems in D79 schools that need to be brought to the forefront. So bearing that in mind, since those 2 programs and/or services are most affected, what do you see as reform for true inclusion in special ed?
Great question. So I'm going to start very quickly by reintroducing 2 very important people. This handsome young man over here is Dr. Tim Lasante. Not only is D79 not being overlooked, in our administration, we've created an executive superintendent whose job it is to lift up those great programs and make sure they're serving all of our students. I want to make sure you know who he is. And this young lady is Dr. Linda Chen, who is our Chief Academic Officer, and under which our Students with Disabilities Special Education falls. I'm going to turn it over to Linda in just a second, but I do want to say this. Special education reform is as much about a philosophy as it is about a strategy. And let me just tell you why that is, and I'm going to turn it over to Linda, and she'll tell you everything that's happening. It is not a program. Let me repeat that. Special education is not a program. A program means that a student with disabilities goes there. You put that student there, and they take care of that student with disabilities, and it lets everybody else off the hook in general ed to meet the needs of the students. I don't work with students with disabilities. They go to that program. So it is not a program. Special education is a service. And because of the law, the service is provided in the least restrictive environment, which is always in the general education classroom, where students are with their peers, where students are exposed to grade level curriculum, where students are exposed to field trips and experiential learning. So it is a service and not a program. And some of the folks in the room that have heard me talk about this will say, there he goes again, he's talking about the service versus the program. Yes, because we need to make sure it's ingrained in everybody's lexicon. It's a service. So that being said, we are taking the philosophical approach under the leadership of this mayor, who has invested resources to make sure students with disabilities have what they need to shift the paradigm from a program where we put kids to a service where we serve children. And with that, I'm going to let our Chief Academic Officer give you some of the specifics, very briefly, about what it is that we're doing around serving our students.
I'll be as brief as I can because there's so many great things happening. But in terms of special education, it is ultimately the service about meeting every student's need as it presents itself. And first of all, it is about the philosophy of making sure that every student is in as inclusive environment as possible, based on their independent needs. What we have going on across the city is we have our collaborative schools communities, where we have District 75 schools and our general ed schools together under one roof, principals and staff working together to make the entire community inclusive. Part of that, so when we think about that, it's just not in a couple of schools, we're doing this citywide. And part of the work that's happening is also with partnership in New School Construction Authority as well, where District 75 programs are absolutely given that access and opportunity to new spaces as well. So we are thinking about this in every fabric and every sector of the work. And I'm very proud to really represent a lot of our principals, some of them are in the room, really working this out. And with our executive superintendents and superintendents, we're able to work in partnership so that we have programs and services for students closest to home. And that's a few of the highlights, and I'd love to have opportunity to have more discussion.
Let me push that just 1 second, because I heard your question to be that vision, or whatever one you might call it, reforms, et cetera, put in place before even we got here. and we've come in and taken a different path. But I think your question is it working? Are there results? Is what I'm hearing. But tell me if that's where you're trying to go. Are you? Go ahead. Give me the microphone.
Thank you. I'm not just talking about results, but I know what the results were when your predecessor put reform into place. There was no money that went with the reform.
You mean like
there was no services that went with it?
They said do inclusion,
it was on paper.
But they didn't prepare people.
They didn't prepare anybody. It was
Right.
all on paper.
So
it was always a struggle. It's still a struggle, but not in the same way.
Right.
So there's still a lot to be done. It's gotten better, but there's still a lot there to be done, and every student does not have the opportunity to have an inclusive setting. Some people think that ICT is the only inclusive setting that there is.
Right.
Although my children have been in ICT, I don't have children in ICT. They're in full-on inclusion.
So
I think most children would benefit, and more children would benefit. But if parents don't even know the opportunity exists, it's for naught.
So let me take that and pass it back to you two. So, because I remember when in the previous administration the inclusion vision was initiated, I felt exactly as you did. I was public advocate at the time, that it was actually philosophically positive, but not grounded in reality because there was not training for the teachers, there was not the supports put in place to actually make it work. So it was kind of like a paper tiger. I appreciate and agree with you that there's been some progress, but I think the question for both of you now, who have been able to give it a fresh look, is where are we on the continuum of trying to make it actually work consistently across the whole city? And where are we in terms of the other point you made, telling parents this is an option for them and giving them that sense of possibility? How do we think we're doing on that?
So we are very squarely in the construction phase. I think that's fair to say. So, and one of the things that I think is really important to make sure it doesn't get lost is that educating students with disabilities isn't just about the student and the parent, although they're critically important. It's all interconnected as a system. So let me give you some examples of why that's important. So we've talked about parent empowerment. What you've just described, where a parent with a student that has disabilities doesn't know what the process is, doesn't know what their rights are, speaks to a disempowerment of the parent. So as Deputy Chancellor Mendoza and her team talk and work around building empowerment modules for our parents, part of that is educating parents on what their rights are, how does the process work, and then as our first Deputy Chancellor and our school leaders are working, it's about educating our school leaders to make sure that they have a protocol to follow when there's a request made for testing, right? So now we're talking about parents, we're talking about school leaders. But see, Lorraine Grillo is also involved in this as well, because in our 5-year capital plan that we've proposed, we are including $750 million to make our facilities accessible. Now, I like to say that New York City has a very historic, Mr. Mayor, we have a historic portfolio of schools, which is a very diplomatic way of saying we have some old schools.
Old schools.
And, so 80, 90, 100 years ago, they didn't think about accessibility. We are thinking about accessibility. So we have $750 million we're investing to make our schools accessible. And then you talk about curriculum and you talk about what that technology looks like. So do we have adaptive technology? That's where Dr. Chen and her colleagues, not just in special education, but in multilingual learners. So when you talk about a student with disabilities, that student with disabilities could speak a different language. So do we have services for that student in that language? And is it culturally responsible? And how are we communicating with parents? You see, it's an ecosystem. And we're taking the approach that the reforms to really be felt on the ground must be grounded in an ecosystem approach. And that's the work that we're taking on now. We're actually trying to make it real so that we don't just have a philosophical statement, but the rubber is actually meeting the road.
Okay, thank you. So Shayla and Kara on deck, and I got some parents on this side. So if you could raise your hand for me if I call your name. Janet Paskin, Sabah Iman, bad glasses, and Sharice Smith. Sharice, there we are. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Shyla. I am a parent of a first grader and a PTA vice president. I live here in District 16. I'm the product of the Houston Independent School District.
Hey.
So if you come to PS 56 and visit us, I will tell you where you can get a real margarita.
And queso.
There's so many things I could ask you about, but my pet peeve is busing. My kid got into G&T. There's not a G&T at his grade level in our district. We got our first placement that he was offered was in Bushwick, a beautiful, beautiful school. We could not get there. Can't get there. And they had 8 kids in their kindergarten class. So there's all this talk about how these programs don't serve enough kids and you cannot get to them. So we opted for a school that was at least the right direction for my commute, but he still cannot get a yellow school bus. And then I come to find out I'm told that private schools can use the yellow school buses, and the kids in my neighborhood who go to private school can go down to their corner and get on the bus, and my kid cannot get bused to his public school. And you may think, we may all think that G&T programs are not the greatest in terms of equity, but I think as long as you have them and as long as you have choice, that transportation is part of equity and choice, and they have to be accessible for everyone if you're going to have those programs. So why is the system like this? Why can't my kid get the school bus to his school?
Sure. So, very fair question. So, let me just say a couple things that I'm going to ask Deputy Chancellor Goldmark to talk a little bit about that specific issue. So, you're absolutely right. If you don't have the ability to avail yourself of choices, then it really isn't a choice system. And we often think about those opportunities in terms of knowledge and resources as well. Obviously, it's not a secret. We had a rough start this school year with transportation. Under the mayor's leadership, we've taken some very aggressive action at rectifying that, and it's going to be much better. We are working with the city council around those particular issues as well. The issue of transportation in terms of non-public schools and public schools, there's some things that we have to keep in mind. And that's what I'm going to ask our Deputy Chancellor to talk a little bit about those specifics. But what I will say right up front is let's make sure that we get your information so that we actually have a one-on-one follow-up as well. But Karen?
Could I just add, I'm sorry, I forgot to add an important thing, which is that it's for me, it's a matter largely of convenience, but we lost 2 kids from my kids' class this year over this issue. They were both kids of color, and they couldn't get to school, so it's not just my family.
Absolutely. So on the busing, we're going to try to have an answer for you before the end of tonight on the specific question. Students who live more than a certain distance are entitled to busing, so we should be able to solve that. In terms of, yes, if outside of district it's different. In terms of your question about the private school busing, there is a state law requiring the DOE to have a busing partnership with non-public schools. We just follow the state law. We don't do anything beyond that. And I will follow up with you on the busing questions that you raised.
So I think the big takeaway is that let's make sure that we're together. We connect you so that we can talk about your specific issue. But it is true that there are state law around the non-public schools that we must provide services to. They determine who gets the busing and who doesn't get the busing. We have to provide that. In terms of the busing outside of the district, there are some protocols and regulations, policies that govern that. But we want to be sure that we understand your circumstance completely and that it's not one of those things that's falling through the cracks. Okay.
Thank you. So Kara's up next, and I just want to remind Janet, Sabah, and Sharice, you all have the next questions. We've got about 30 more minutes, so I want to make sure that you guys get your questions nice and short and get it in there so we can get more questions asked this evening, okay? Kara.
Yes, good evening, everyone, fellow parents, Mayor de Blasio. Chancellor Carenza. So I am a very proud parent of two beautiful children, and I'm representing proudly District 16 as well as 13. My eldest is at PS 11, and my youngest will be starting his school career very shortly in September at a wonderful preschool that is very small but doing mighty things right here in Bedside, Little Sun People. So we're very excited. So my question for you both is, how does the city envision culturally responsive pedagogy as defined by Guinevere Gray, but many others well-versed in this subject and this curriculum? How do we envision this for New York City public schools? Outside of unconscious bias training, which we know is well mandated and already in the works for both our teachers and our administration, and also how will we mandate it as part of teacher evaluation and training?
Great. So I'm going to ask our Chief Academic Officer in a minute to talk a little bit about this. But the mayor mentioned that we are one of the most diverse cities in the world, but the most diverse city in America. That's true. And when you look at the diversity, not only in New York City, but in the Department of Education, it's not a matter of being a luxury that what our students read, what our students study, what our students know about history is culturally relevant. It's required because our students have to understand where they fit in the history, not only of New York City, New York State, but in America. So we've taken the approach under this administration that all of what we do in terms of curriculum will be moving towards much more culturally relevant pedagogy, which is a very fancy word for those of you that are not educators, which is how you teach, and curriculum, which is what you teach. So how we teach it and what we teach must be culturally relevant. So who are the people that we're studying? Who are the people that have contributed to history? Who are the native people that lived in this land and contributed to the governmental processes that now become part of what we know and do? Do our students know who Stuyvesant was? Do they? Do our students know why Wall Street is Wall Street? You see, this is part of the cultural relevance of our city that connects to the broader relevance in terms of what they learn and how they learn it. Now, we're very fortunate that we have a chief academic officer who is moving this ball very quickly forward. And I just want to say before I give her the microphone that I want to thank you for recognizing the work that is happening on implicit bias training here in New York City. I will tell you that I've lived in 4 other states and served in 4 other school systems. This is my 5th. Nowhere else in the country is the work around implicit bias happening like it's happening in New York City. Ironically, the largest system in America. But I will tell you this, every start of the school year, at the risk of being accused of being a serial tweeter, I tweet the same thing at the beginning of every school year. And it's very simply a picture of a young lady of color, a young woman of color. And what she says in her quote is, "My teacher thought I was smarter than I was, so I was." Now think about that for a minute. That is the heart of why we do implicit bias training, because those predisposed ideas about who can learn, who can't learn, we have to check it. We have to recognize it, and we have to check it, and we have to get past it to make sure that we're doing what we need to do for our students. Dr. Chen.
Great. So, terrific question. So on the front of what we teach around curriculum, so what we will be doing is engaging our school communities because we have experts all across the city in our classrooms. So it's not just about central, but it's working with our teachers to really identify the best materials that reflect the diversity of our students. That is incredibly important in terms of what they see, not only in literature, but in every single subject area. In addition to that, the how you teach piece, you're correct in that it is beyond, it is absolutely, the beginnings of this is in a lot of the implicit bias training that we are doing citywide through LaShawn Robinson's work, Deputy Chancellor Robinson. But it also is, how does every teacher then think about who every student is? What is the identity that they walk into each classroom with? It is that sense of belonging that is created for every student for who they are. And that is also work we're doing around thinking about how, you asked a question about teacher evaluation. And while it may not have those very words that you use in the teacher evaluation, there is in the framework that we use something around getting to know students, and that's partly how we define that, is knowing who they are, their culture, their identity, the way they think of themselves. And that is incredibly important in the work that we are doing. So part of our work is also working alongside our schools through our borough centers to support teachers in that effort.
Thank you. Next up, Janet, and then on deck, Saban, Charisse. And then I'm going to go to that section over there.
Hi, my name is Janet Paskin. I'm a parent in District 17. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm a little nervous. I live in District 17, and every day we walk our son to a District 17 school. But that's not true of the vast majority of my neighbors. So many parents are sending their kids elsewhere, and when I look at where they're sending them, because the D17 schools are good, there are plenty of really good options that I think are, certainly good enough for my son. They're often going to schools that are enriched, literally enriched, by parents and parent organizations that can raise hundreds of thousands, if not over $1 million, to supplement the school budgets every year. And a lot of times that comes just straight out of a parent appeal. Mayor, I think you know something of this from your experience in District 15. And that's just a system where, this parent body is saying to parents, this year the ask is $1,000. Get out your checkbook, right? You can get a lot of additional teachers. You can provide a lot of additional services with all of that money. And so when I hear from the administration that our schools just need to promote themselves better, our schools just need to market better, parents just don't know what our schools offer, I actually think they do know. And I think that that is not an equal playing field on which you can expect schools that can't raise that kind of additional money to compete. It's just not fair. And when you talk about equity and you say, oh, we're just going to compete harder, everybody's just going to choose, that doesn't sound right to me. So when you talk about what is it that you say to a parent like me and to other District 17 parents where we see enrollment declining, and I don't think our schools are competing in a fair contest?
Can I just ask you to make sure I'm fully, just hold on to this a sec. Just want to make sure I get the fullness of the question. When you say, for example, the notion that some schools are able to enrich themselves, I've absolutely positively seen that. I can't tell if you're talking about a traditional public school that happens to have economic reality in their parent body where they can bring a lot of money in through their PTA, or you're talking about a charter school that has a wealthy network behind it, or you're talking about both. I'm a little confused, like which specific piece of the equation you're talking about.
I think both are a part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I'm particularly, just me personally, I'm particularly offended by the excessive parent fundraising that goes on in our public schools. Mm-hmm. And I want to mention, because I really applaud you, Chancellor Carranza, for talking about diversity and school segregation in such blunt terms. I think that that is much needed and has been in New York for a long time. It's not just that parents are sending their kids to richer schools, they're also sending them to whiter schools. And I think that that's a place where the administration could really be doing more to strengthen the schools in our communities so that kids and families stay.
Well, I'm going to start and pass to you. Look, I think, thank you, it's an excellent point. I think the whole idea, and I'm going to start very clearly by saying, long way to go. So there's no, we're not even close to the day where we declare any mission accomplished around here. It is, but the Equity and Excellence vision is about redistributing resources, because everything that we have done to try and create a different kind of school system requires moving resources to schools that haven't had them. Whether it is community schools, whether it's renewal schools, whether it's what we're doing obviously in terms of pre-K, 3K, which has disproportionately helped schools that were less advantaged, AP for all, you name it. All of the different pieces are trying to turn a situation, which I think you're absolutely right, was grounded in profound inequality. Now, moving a lot of resources, you know, it's not going to happen in 1 year or 2 years. It's a constant thing. And we talked about the fair student funding. This is a big piece of the equation too. The fact that we're, I think, just a few years away from being able to get every school to the same basic level is profoundly important. I don't know if I think your frustration with the reality of some schools that are self-enriching, I emotionally feel that too. But that's, to me, not where we make the change. We make the change by sending the resources we do have more and more to the schools that we're not invested in. And things like the plan we just agreed to with the teachers, which says that we can get high-quality teachers in subject areas where we couldn't get them to some of the neediest schools. It's particularly true in the Bronx, but it's true in neighborhoods here in Brooklyn as well. That's a big breakthrough that's going to allow us to get a different kind of equality, which is to bring in more and stronger teachers into schools that often literally couldn't even fill the lines. So all of this is working towards equity in different ways. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think the first part of your question, and I want to thank you for asking the question, it really is in many cases the elephant in the room. So you asked, what would I say to a parent like yourself who sends your children to the local school while others may send their students out? What I would say to you is thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for investing in our schools. And while I completely agree with the mayor and what he just said, I will also add to this that it only reinforces what I spoke about earlier, what the mayor has spoken about in terms of fully funding our schools so that they have the resources that they need to be able to do the programming, the extracurricular, the enrichment activities. People seem to think, in my almost 30-year career as an educator, people have always said to me, you can't just throw money at the issue. Just once, I wish they would have thrown money at the issue. Just once, because we could actually show how you can actually ameliorate some of those discrepancies. I think you said something that's very profound as well. You see, there has been an ideation that this administration has fought against. And the ideation is that you must go to certain elementary schools because then your students will go to certain middle schools. And then once your student goes to certain middle schools, you go to certain high schools. And then they go to Ivy League colleges, right? And I don't blame parents for having that. Shame on us for reinforcing that. Shame on us for reinforcing that. And what we're trying to do is change that paradigm where it says that 50% of the students that go to specialized schools come from 21 middle schools. When we have a portfolio of over 600 middle schools, parents need to understand the incredible opportunities they have right in their neighborhoods to go to their local school, to be part of the sweat equity in many cases. If you don't have the financial resources, you have the social capital, you have the knowledge, the fund of knowledge that you can contribute to that school. That's what equity and excellence is all about. How do we empower those voices? How do we empower parents to have that kind of a say? I can tell you that in my travels around the city, in town halls, this is a question that is often asked. And I will tell you that there are CECs in our city that are starting to have a conversation in terms of the idea, what would it look like for us to have a process where funds that are raised at a specific school, there's at least a percentage that goes into a general fund that then gets distributed to different schools that don't have the ability to raise that. That's not our proposal. That's coming right from the ground, right from parents who are seeing the same kind of challenge and asking the question, what could we do about that? So I do think that in New York City, we do have this incredible opportunity because equity is important to us to understand that how we provide those opportunities for parents to have a voice is critically important. The other thing that I would say that is critically important is you need to recognize this. I'm going to call out one of my colleagues in a very good way. She's a superintendent. Rahisha Aman, who is here, District 16. And let me tell you why I'm calling her out. A lot of great districts in Brooklyn.
Hold on, she needs to stand up when she's called out.
Yes, please. You correct me if I'm wrong, Rahisha. 50% of the seats in District 16 are now in charters. 50%. So what Superintendent Aman and her colleagues could have said is, we're losing market share. What are we going to do? It's just not fair. You know what they did? They buckled down. They invested in their schools. She went and got lots of community partners to partner with her in District 16. And while test scores aren't the only and sole determinant of how a school is doing, let us be really clear. We are mano a mano linked in that belief. I will tell you, last school year, District 16 in English Language Arts and Math had the highest percentage of gain of any district in the city. Thank you. Now, why is that important? Because when the conversation in the local bodega, in the conversation in the local coffee house, in the conversation at the dinner party then happens about why shouldn't we send our kids to District 16 schools? Let's go find somewhere else. There is now a counter conversation that is happening that's saying, hey, watch out. Things are on the move in District 16. These schools are doing something great. Maybe you should take a look at what's happening in your local school. That's the kind of organic bottom-up conversation that the mayor's talking about. And at the same time, every now and then, I'm going to throw a little bomb out there and say, yeah, why are certain parents sending their kids somewhere else when we should be doing everything we can to empower them to send their kids right here to their local schools? And by the way, parents that are talking about what is another way of taking resources and helping spread that so we have equity, we're going to support those conversations as well so that we have those organic conversations about how to improve our schools. It's not a simple conversation, it's not a simplistic conversation, but it's an important conversation. I want to end the way I started to answer your question. Thank you. Thank you for investing in your schools, in your district.
Thank you. So Sabah and Sharice, you're up next.
Hello. Sorry. I'm going to read my question since I'm nervous a little bit. Outside tutoring programs have become big businesses because our children are not getting the academic support they need in our schools, especially the immigration population. Some schools have about at least 20% of immigrants. Their parents always come to us, other immigrants who can speak the language, and ask, is there a tutoring program? Is there help with the math? Especially now that every year we have a different math program, like this year is Singapore math, next year is, I don't know what, we get lost. And we can help our kids, but immigrants with lack of language, they can't help their kids. So can all of you help us get tutoring at least like an hour a day or a few hours a week in each of our schools so we can help all children, not just some children? Thank you.
Yeah, so in the interest of time, I'm going to be very brief, but I want to say yes. And the work that we're doing with all of our superintendents is to do just that. How do we get partners to be able to provide that kind of support? Understanding that we have an immigrant community. By the way, does everybody understand that today was a historic day right here in New York State? Because our legislature in Albany today passed the Dreamers Act. Right? Today. That happened today. On Naquan's birthday, by the way. And the reason that's important is that when there are segments of our government at the federal level, executive level, saying that immigrants are bad, immigrants are just living off the system, that we are rapists and we are thieves, New York is saying, no, we're not. New York State is saying, no, you're not. If you're a dreamer, here's where the dream is. The city of New York is saying, and through our equity and excellence agenda, you're going to get 3K, pre-K, you're going to get college access for all, you're going to get AP for all. The list goes on and on and on. Part of that is making sure that we have tutoring that's responsive to our communities as well. I know that that's what our superintendents are focusing on. Our executive superintendents are working with them to get the resources. So the answer to you is yes. That is what we believe in. And we are a city of immigrants. We value our immigrant population. So the answer is yes. Ask your principal, because we're already in those conversations.
Thank you. So Sharice is up next, and then I have Tanya Samuels. And then on deck, Shireen White in this section. Shireen, where are you? Okay. And Lourdes Rivera. Lourdes, perfect.
Hi, so my name is Cherie Smith, and I have a son in District 17. There's been a lot of talk tonight about equity, and in my opinion, that includes district schools, it includes selective schools, charter schools, parochial schools, because as parents, we all obviously care and want the best fit for our respective children. But I also believe that equity includes same curriculum, which I think is what Common Core was really about. But what's being taught in one school, the curriculum in one school, is not the same as the curriculum in another school. For instance, Singapore math. Didn't know that was happening in New York City. My son goes to Medgar Evers College Prep, which is a selective school, right? And he goes there because I want the very best. However, equity is about more than curriculum too. We were promised extra classrooms because we're overcrowded. We were promised a gym. We have children taking classes in trailers. We have children taking gym in the hallways. We were told that the expansion was going to be approved when we look on the School Construction Authority list. Despite that, we don't see ourselves on the list. And I just want to know what is being done, of course, with respect to Medgar Evers and our expansion, but what is of the mindset to ensure that equity is across the board so that our children are learning the same things, they're all given the same opportunities, and also, and that includes in the classroom and outside the classroom, because as this young lady just said, if it's very hard to compete when we have sports teams and morale is low because we have track team members that go to Staten Island to practice for track because we don't have a gym. So I just want to know what's being done to ensure that there's true equity and the answer in terms of where the project stands at Medgar Evers.
So I'm going to start and pass to Lorraine Grillo. I want to first say that the Medgar Evers story is a very good story and a very extraordinary example of what can be achieved in a public school system. So we want to keep building upon it. We want to keep making sure it's a success. It's unacceptable to me that kids ever have to have gym in the hallway like you were talking about. That's not acceptable at Medgar Evers or any place else. Lorraine Grillo is working on the plan to try and address a set of the different problems that you just talked about. Lorraine, let's get the status update.
Absolutely. We recently completed our feasibility study, our scope, to see what actually could fit with our architects. And I believe, and I'm looking for my staff over here, I believe we have an appointment to meet with your principal to go over it to see if this is what he wants. And then we're going to take it because the parents have been so involved in this, we'd like to sit down with the parents and go through that with them as well.
How soon, Lorraine?
Oh, within days. I mean, certainly we're ready to do it because we've completed the study.
Will you please follow up and make sure that you guys get that appointment for the parents?
So there was also a little piece about curriculum. So, the point is very well taken, and I just want to give context to this. So there are ideas in education that are like pendulum, and they swing from one extreme to the other. And it was the case in New York City in the not too distant past, where there was an idea that you decentralize everything. You let schools make decisions because schools know their community best, and schools get to determine what it is that they're studying, how they're studying, what curriculum is. And then you add on top of that the fact that there are some communities, some school communities, that consider the textbook or the program, i.e. Singapore math or the textbook, the curriculum. It's not. That's never the curriculum. They help teach the curriculum, right, Mr. Chair? But it's not the curriculum. So the pendulum swung, in my very humble opinion, so far to the decentralized space that with 1,800 schools in New York City, you probably have somewhere around 800 different philosophies of what should be taught and how it should be taught. Let me be really clear about what I'm thinking. If we are a unified system, we are one system, we're not a confederation of independent schools. 1,800 schools that just happen to be located geographically in the greater New York area. No, we're a unified system. And what unites us is equity and excellence. And what unites us even further is making sure that students have what they need to be successful. Then there is some modicum that is happening right now where we're tightening what schools and what students should be learning in those schools. It's not a total abdication of giving people choices, but those choices are very rapidly going to be within the context of a framework. So if you're using a certain approach, if you're using certain materials to teach your math curriculum, great, God bless America. However, it should meet these characteristics and these standards in the framework, because then we can assure that students are getting what they need to meet the state standards. And if they get what they need to meet the state standards, they're being academically rigorous so that they can apply and get into colleges. It sounds very simple. It's not. Because the minute we say we want you to think about this within this framework, somebody somewhere is going to say, but you're taking away my authority. No, we're not. We're making sure that everyone has what they need, aligned with state standards, aligned with what we know about teaching children. The other thing that I'm going to propose to you is, because we want to get as many questions as possible, is that as soon as we finish the open general questioning, our chief academic officer is here as well, and we want to make sure you have a conversation for some specifics as well.
Great. So I see sad faces because time's ticking and it's getting really late and we have 3 more cards. So I put up on deck Tanya from CC23, Shireen White, and Lourdes Rivera. But I want to remind you that our team's going to be here, so the DCs will be here. We're going to have the Bronx North on the north side, and the Bronx South over on this end. Brooklyn, oh my God. Did I just say that?
We're just
Bronx
checking.
is next. See, I
sure.
moved on to the next week. Sorry about that. See how late it's getting?
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. This is where I live. I live in Brooklyn. We're going to have north on this side and south on that side, so our soups and our executive soups will be able to hang out for a little bit, and as will our other staff. But we want to just make sure that we wrap up with the last 3 questions. And then just know that, you know, we're in a lot of places, and we're out and about, and we're getting questions answered. We're going to take your cards. Many of you have cards if you didn't get a chance to ask a question. We're going to collect your cards. We're absorbing them. We're answering them. So be sure to get us your cards, and we'll make sure we take care of that and get an answer.
But can I just add the point about just everyone, because all the deputy chancellors are here, the head of the school construction authority, again, executive superintendents, the superintendents. I always like to say when I'm at a town hall meeting, a lot of the people that you always feel you want to talk to and address your concerns to are like right there. You don't need an appointment, you just walk up to them. You can at least start the conversation and know how to follow up with them. So please, if there's something that's been on your mind, you know, a really deep concern, try and connect with the person you want to follow up with before you leave the room tonight, because it's the best way to get things done. All right. Who's next?
Good evening, everyone. Come on, I know it's late.
Try again.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Tanya Samuels. I'm the current president for CEC 23 and also for President's Council. My question lies around for students to be globally competitive, how do you ensure that all students are multi-language learners, and especially in a highly populated district as District 23, which is rated to be the third highest sheltered populations? How do we get our kids to be globally learners of multi-language?
Yes, a great question. So the question that was asked about curriculum, that has directly implications for what you just talked about. So we want to make sure that our curriculum is not only multicultural, it's representative, but we also want to make sure that it's rigorous, right? So our students are able to do that. This year, we opened 43 additional dual language and bilingual programs in the city of New York. I think per capita, we lead the nation in dual language and bilingual programs, including the first ever in the country Albanian dual language program. Did you know that? We have an Albanian dual language program right here in Nueva York. So we think that our students, it's important that they have opportunities to be not only exposed, but develop competency in another language. That being said, we are also working with our multilingual learner department. And by the way, some of you are thinking, what is this multilingual learner department? What is that? Well, it used to be known as the English language learner department. And let me tell you why that's different. Because when you say to me, you're an English language learner, which by the way I was, I only spoke Spanish when I started kindergarten, an English language learner, that says to me that the language that I speak, which in my case was Spanish, isn't sufficient to be a student in the public school system. You have to learn English, so you're an English language learner. We know that that's not true. I already had half of bilingual. All I needed to do was add English and I was bilingual. So instead, we're multilingual learners, and that's how we're approaching. It's a mind shift. How we approach language and the power of language is really, really important to us. Our chief academic officer can share much more detail about that, but we believe in the global graduate. And speaking of the global graduate, we also have a profile of the New York City graduate that we will be widely sharing very soon, which talks about being a multilingual learner, which talks about being a student that uses technology in a very efficient way, talks all kinds of characteristics that make up our graduate. That also is going to be a rich conversation for us as we say, okay, what are we trying to get when we graduate our students? That's our vision of a multilingual learner. But thank you for asking that question.
Okay, next question. Shireen, there we go.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shireen. I'm a parent of District 18. My question is, there are some schools that have after-school programs, and the school that my kids go, there's no after-school program. And also my other concern is there are no crossing guards at the school.
Hold on, a crossing guard. Which school is it, please?
PS 233.
PS 233.
Yes.
And you're saying there's not crossing guards?
There are crossing guards, but there's an intersection where the kids have to go across Linden Boulevard in order to get to school, and there's not a crossing guard there.
Okay, Chief, where's Chief Beltran? You want to speak to this? Because we made sure that all the crossing guard jobs that were not filled got filled, so there would be enough crossing guards for the whole city. But it's very, very important, and I thank you for raising this, that if there's any place that's not being covered effectively, we need to fix that immediately, and until a crossing guard is there, precincts, obviously working with school safety, have to make sure that happens. So Chief, tell us how you're going to fix this situation.
Yeah, correct. We had a similar issue come up at the last town hall, almost at the same time, so it's kind of we had almost the same situation, because I know Linden Boulevard, and the issue over there was Seagirt Boulevard in the other school in Queens. So I'm going to follow up with you. I'm going to get the information for the specific intersection and school. You said PS 233. So we're going to follow up on that and make sure we do an assessment there, and that we, if one is needed there, like you say, we're going to make sure that that gets prioritized.
And then on the after-school point, I'll start, and if anyone else wants to add, the one part of the schools that we guarantee after-school for is middle school kids. So all 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, since this administration began, we guaranteed, made a universal right, that middle school kids get after-school for free. Sometimes it's in the same school building, sometimes it's someplace else in the neighborhood, but they're guaranteed. We did not bluntly have the resources to do that for all elementary schools. I think as we keep increasing the funding to individual schools, and again, we need some of that money to come from Albany, and we do the fair student funding formula up to 100% for every school, I think this is one of the things a lot of schools will obviously invest in. But so I think we can't solve it every place today, but hopefully that's going to put us on a path to solving it.
And just adding to that, I'm Darryl Ratcher. I'm the Associate Commissioner over at DYCD, the Department of Youth and Community Development. Just adding that, in Brooklyn, since the start of the administration, after-school program slots have increased by over 200%. So I will come over to you, get an idea of where your location is, where your students go, your children go, and then we will work out something.
Thank you, sir.
Great. Next question.
Hi, I'm a little nervous. I'm a concerned parent.
Get a little closer.
Hi.
And talk into
By
the
the
mic
way-
because the translators, the interpreters need to hear your
Yeah, and I'll make you
Yes.
less nervous by saying I love your hair color.
Thank you.
I don't know what blue or purple that is, but it's really cool.
Thank you.
What do you call that? Do you know what you call that?
Berry blue.
What is it?
Berry.
Berry?
It's called berry blue.
Berry blue? Would you turn in profile, please? I like that. Give her a round of applause for that hair color. That's beautiful.
We can get you some.
Two things.
I'm thinking of that.
Two things, hopefully it turns into one. One is part of PTA. We only have a file cabinet. We don't have any space
For the PTA.
for PTA in our school, and we serve over 600 students. We serve over 600 students in my school alone in PSIS 288. And, you know, there's only so much a PTA parent is allowed to do. And sometimes we feel that we are being unfair, unjust, because there's no space. We have to fight with, well, like us, we have to fight with the dentist's office. We share with the dentist sometimes. Sometimes we have to go in the teacher's lounge.
Which district again?
District 21.
21. Is the superintendent here?
Yes, she is.
Okay, superintendent, I'm just going to cut to the chase on the first part. We got to get her some space.
Yes, we will.
We have
Okay.
none.
Okay, but
A small file cabinet.
Superintendent.
So I
and-
will text the principal right now to make sure you have
Okay,
more
and
space.
Hydra, you'll
tomorrow
follow
morning.
up
Thank
too?
you.
There's no reason for that.
Thank you. And two, my children, the situation where we just came out of, make a long story short, my children was able, through where we live at, through the McKinley state law, have services. Now that we are permanent, my children have very little services that they can get through the school, like they have to fight for after school. We have no after school program within our school. And then, you know, we just started with a mood meter for the children. And, you know, this is things that I think should have been brought into the school years ago. Our principal knows every child's first name, last name, where they live, you know, teachers, first, last name, everything. And we have to sit with children, you know, that have severe mental issues. And we are a community-based school. There's only so much PTA parents are allowed to do, are allowed to say to these children. We can't nurture them as a parent should nurture a child. So where can, as a parent, how should I approach a child who's dealing with mental issues, who's dealing with severe things at home and is coming into school and bringing it in? How you doing? How's your day? What would you like to talk about? Sometimes we do that, and sometimes we also get discouraged from speaking to a child oh, no, you can't say this, no, you can't say that. Well, what can we do as a PTA vice president?
Thank you.
Good. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, so I would say, just very briefly, what you just described in terms of what you say to students is right on the money. Students don't want to know. What students want to know is that there is somebody that cares, somebody that's going to listen. So kudos. Yes, you're doing exactly the right thing already. However, what we're going to do is you have a great superintendent. So when we get done, I want you to connect on both of these issues. And I got to tell you, I am thrilled when you said they have a mood meter. That's the ruler program, which is part of our social emotional learning. It's what we believe in. That's part of equity and excellence. So that thrills me because now that whole community has a way of talking about how do I feel? Am I okay? It's a way that we support our school. So I'm really excited about that. But those specific issues, we want to connect you with our superintendent.
I think it's also very important what you're raising about, a lot of parents want to help, and I think there is a bad history, especially with PTAs, of parents being discouraged from being in the building, or discouraged from contributing, or discouraged from offering their opinion. And we are trying to reverse that. Obviously, in a mental health situation, the best thing is to get everyone trained to understand how to deal with this. There's literally training, and we can make sure it happens in your school superintendent. We should be able to do mental health first aid training in the school so everyone gets that common training on how to deal with different situations. But I think the underlying point in what you're saying is, and again, this is why Hydra has been chosen for her role to help lead the way, is we've got to reorient the school system to understand that parental involvement in the building is a good thing.
Yeah.
And that the more, the better. That it underlies all the progress we need to make. And you cannot change anything only top down. I mean, I think we covered the questions that you had called on, so I'm going to say also a little closing point here, that there are two different ideas of how to change the world. And the one that I am convinced does not work is top down, where there's, people think they can just give a set of orders and the world's going to change. I don't believe that's how it works. I believe the world changes when people have a shared vision at the grassroots and it bubbles up and it really makes an impact. So for us to talk about equity and excellence, which we believe in fundamentally, it cannot be achieved if we don't change the entire role of parents in the school system. The goal, equity and excellence, is right. We're putting a lot of money into it. We're trying to change the programs, and that's all good. But if the people are not a part of it, it will not work and it will not be sustained. So that's part of why these gatherings are important to us, to hear what you believe is working, what you believe is not working, what you're experiencing as parent leaders, what kind of different approach we need to take, including a different dialogue. If we're not having the right dialogue with you, if your suggestions are not registering properly, we've got to do something differently. Because, we have 3 years more we're going to be here. And we want to make sure in those 3 years we actually change things. And there's a lot more fairness and a lot more actual experience of equity by the time this is over. But if there's not an army of people figuring out with us how to do it, it will not happen. So that's why this is so important. Amen. We will work together. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So if you still have some questions, our staff is here. We'll have some folks on Brooklyn North, Brooklyn South. Thank you all for coming out this evening. Have a safe drive, ride, walk home.